What are gonna be the real consequences of COVID like in 20 years? 20-year-old rolling their eyes when their parents talk about COVID-19. Yeah, I think it will be something like this back in my days. I was at home for 50 days, so I think you can stay in your room for an hour. 50? I'm on day 72 with no end in sight. Here in Spain, I don't know anymore. I stopped counting at home since the 13th of March. I wonder how colleges, universities will be impacted. My college moved all its classes for the next 3 semesters online, and the first question that was asked was, will you be reducing tuition? Quote, I think if they don't, a lot of people won't be able to go to college or finish out their degrees. I'm a lecturer and I think it's really fascinating. On the one hand, students like to have a campus to meet their peers, to meet romantic partners, a quiet library, nice green space. They like face-to-face labs, even lectures, etc. The younger the students are, in general, the worse they seem to be doing with a totally online learning process, as they are not as good at self-direction as a 30-year-old doing their MSc, for example. On the other hand, it could make college much cheaper. In 100 years they will be making memes about how the 20s of each century started with a plague. Edit. Well, my first comment to get over 1,000. Thanks guys. Joke's on them. In 100 years they will be in their own plague. More jobs will become remote as employers realize it's more efficient and cheaper. Offices cost money. People cost more money than offices. Once everything is remote, the companies will hire the cheapest workers in other countries. My worry is that more jobs might be pushed abroad to cheaper countries when employers realize jobs can be done remotely. IT has been able to be remote for some time. However, culture and time zone differences have caused projects to suffer. I'm a software dev, and our company is looking to move all devs to go remote. However, we are not sending development overseas, as that has proven time and time again to cause problems. The question is, do my wife and I move now? This is a huge thing. Outsourcing has never been as effective as companies hoped. Best case, they wind up creating a dedicated branch in their outsourced country, because they still need locals to handle management and such. So instead of having a bunch of Indian developers dialing into the morning meetings with their American manager, they have an Indian branch with local manager and devs with their own projects. Indian devs don't like working the night shift any more than US devs. And the good ones aren't so desperate that you can force them to do so like you could decades ago. Their tech economy is booming. They're in a seller's market, same as Western devs. This does have the advantage of time zone coverage. If you're a service provider and your service goes down during nighttime in the West, your Eastern studios can start the troubleshooting without having to wake up your Western devs. And vice versa. Very effective. Kids who are just starting school this year will have a completely different experience for the rest of the school life. IIRC. There have been studies about the first few foundation years of school being a clear predictor for the rest of your learning life. No idea what will be different. Just that these kids are not going to be like any other cohort of students. I'm hoping it'll lead towards good time management skills and good familiarity with technology. The latter is obvious, but I think there might be some merit in learning when to goof off and when to make sure you get things turned in on time, and mostly correct, so you can continue goofing off. Unfortunately, I think it'll make socioeconomic status more visible. Sure, some kids will make progress with school at home. However, I imagine that parents who already struggled financially and may not be able to stay home and help their kid will have issues. Some families may not be able to afford internet or a computer, and their kids may end up with an inferior education through no fault of their own. The kids of today will be paying financially for this. The kids of tomorrow will also be paying financially for this, just like kids have been doing for generations. Let's face facts, things have gone downhill since the early 90s. Hopefully we will be better prepared for the next inevitable pandemic. We won't. We'll eventually start building up a good worldwide response organization. Then it will get dismantled because they aren't doing anything. The IT paradox. When everything is working, why do we pay you? You don't do anything all day. When something breaks, why do we even pay you? You should have prevented this. Just yoink the network cable for an hour once every few weeks. Bill Gates has been on that crusade for over a decade now. Conspiracy, or people believing that COVID was just a conspiracy and the millions that died never really existed. That's already happening. My mom has a coworker who thinks it's all a conspiracy and we live in one of the hardest hit states. Our history memes is gonna be popping. When you just chillin' in 2020 and someone next to you Kage's death-related picture. I work on a COVID ICU as a nurse. When our patients get discharged from the ICU, many of them will have lasting, if not permanent, conditions from this disease. It's really too early to tell how many survivors will have disabilities and how many will recover. 100%. Simply being laid out on a ventilator for 20 to 30 days takes a while to recoup from. Should one suffer strokes, renal damage or impaired lung function, those conditions can follow them for the rest of their possibly shortened lifespan. Having a large number of people suddenly disabled and without employment-tied health insurance in falling economy is going to perhaps be a problem, monsieur. We're only 2 months into this, so this is all wild-ass speculation, but retail has been teetering on the brink of death for years. And this is going to be the final nail in the coffin for a lot of it. Sure, things are reopening, but people aren't going to be jamming to fill the malls. Major clothing retailers that have a store in every mall might cut back to 1 or 2 per city. A lot of jobs just aren't going to come back. Same with restaurants. A lot of people, especially young people, are realizing how much money you can save cooking at home. A lot of servers aren't getting their jobs back. The economic slump is going to require a lot of stimulus, which means in 20 years, taxes are gonna be crazy. I agree about retail. I don't agree about restaurants. Because while people are realizing how much money you can save, people in general are lazy and will fall back on that. I still will think restaurants will come out okay as an industry. Only those that had the capital to weather the storm, monsieur. Small businesses and family-owned restaurants are going to struggle to recover, if it's even a possibility. It's an objective fact that some restaurants will not be able to reopen after this. The socialization effects of young kids during this time. By the time children are 3 years old, 80% of their brain is wired, developed to accept love, how to play, how to learn, etc. By age 5, 90% of their brain is wired. All the children who are missing out on a year or more of socialization could have unknown consequences. Strong family ties where they are afraid to leave home, a harder time making new friends, difficulty socializing, depression or other mental health issues later on in life. I know people think that keeping their 2 or 3-year-old home, even elementary kids, isn't a big deal, but having this time where they are kept inside and only seeing their parents and siblings is going to affect them in unknown ways 20, 30, 40 years down the road. I agree. My 9-year-old is now afraid to yell hello to her friends across the street. Exactly. I am a school-age administrator and I'm seeing it in elementary-age children a lot. If this only lasts 2 to 3 months, I don't think it will be that bad. But many parents are opting to keep their children home all summer long. Schools are talking about not opening back up in the fall. The consequences of a year of no social contact other than through technology are going to be insane. Dude, my 5-year-old doesn't want to go anywhere off our property. He's like, nope, there might be sick people out there. I think this will be big. I have a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. They're both regular daycare kids, and are both profoundly affected. It's only been like 8 weeks. All of a sudden, no daycare. no play dates, no teachers, no friends, no zoo, no park, no aunties, no grandma, no grandpa, no store, nothing. Their entire world shattered down to a bare core overnight. They're resilient, but I can see the pain in them as your behavioral changes. Things my 3-year-old says. How they act and play. Their sudden closeness. They constantly ask in their own little ways for the things they know should be happening. It's breaking my heart. We recently got them back in daycare on limited terms, and the change was both instant and enormous. I'm wondering if more people will move to the burbs. I've always loved my neighborhood in spite of having very little space and a tiny yard. But lately I've wished that we lived somewhere with a bigger yard. With trees, a driveway with a basketball hoop, room for home offices, etc. Especially if telecommuting becomes more common or if kids can't go back to school in the fall. I wouldn't mind the burbs if we actually had good public transportation in more than a handful of cities here in America. It's ridiculous that if you don't have a car, unable to drive, you're almost fucked in a lot of places. People will say just use the bus. Even the bus near me is horrible. Takes 1.5 hours to get a 10-minute car ride, 45-minute walk. And there's no subway, metro, rail system in this city. And I'm right on the edge of the city. City's too expensive. Burbs have too bad public transportation. I think America needs to heavily invest in their transportation across America. Even just reinvest nationally in the rail system would be a huge step. A lot of low-paid, essential workers are going to be bitter. Rightfully so. I expect some changes are going to result from that whole situation. And it better involve unionizing. United we bargain, divided we beg. Companies will start saving money for emergency funds. Then new management will take over and spend all the money meant for emergencies on frivolous shit. An emergency will happen and the employees will suffer again. As long as the government provides bailouts, where is the incentive to save for a rainy day? Exactly. Let them burn. I am guessing another baby boom might happen after the quarantine, so I guess we'll have another boomer generation. Gonna use the opportunity to say, okay boomer, to teens and young adults by then lol. A baby boom of first children. Lots of people with no kids are going to have kids in 9 months. And lots of people who already have them are deciding, maybe that's enough, now that they have to spend all day every day with a monsieur. TBH, humans are such creatures of habit, so we'll inevitably go back to our old ways of not washing hands, going to crowded areas while sick, go on cruise ships, etc. Economically we'll change, but for the most part we'll go back to our carelessness much sooner than 20 years. When I'm an old man, handshaking will probably be seen as a quaint traditional greeting that only old men who know each other closely will do. Our generation will be the silly grandparents wiping down groceries before we put them away. Oh grandpa, you don't have to do that. I lived through COVID-19 back in 2020 and kept you alive. Quote. Thank you so much for watching and have a good day.